Hello and welcome to Indo Politics with Kevin Doyle in the hot seat this week. A week when the government has tried to keep us all happy with a few giveaways that might help us with the cost of living. We'll be looking at whether or not they're actually going to satisfy the public and the motorists. We'll be talking about Mairead McGuinness's new job. She's back on the road over in Europe. And in Leinster House, they're starting to talk about the by-elections and what it might all mean and who might win. Cónal, let's start with the big topic of the week. There was, I suppose, a slow build-up to this package of measures that the government announced. They tried on one hand to tell us, it might be 100 million, it's going to be very short term. They kind of went a bit medium in the middle in terms of the spend and then also in terms of how long they're going to last. We probably needn't go through the measures at this stage. People will have seen the price at the petrol pump come down most places now, I think it's fair to be said. But is this enough that people go, oh, thanks, you did something for us, lads? Or is it kind of like, nah, that's only scratching the surface?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was funny because some people in government kind of briefing when the package was announced that, and I was kind of getting to the point, I was like, hold on a second, this was not supposed to be necessarily out to the end of May. This was kind of, the talk initially, maybe about a fortnight ago or 10 days ago, was to looking at Italy, where they did something like 20 days. And then suddenly it became out to the end of May. And anyway, the opposition reaction to the package has been what you'd expect. It doesn't go far enough. Labour have called it anemic. It's a €250 million package. Bear in mind, back in 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the weeks after that, the government did a package that was about €390 million. And you add on to that then the extensions, it went over to €400 million. The question for the government now is, there's a couple of measures. We don't need to go through all of them, but it's important to say that the fuel allowance extension is only 4 weeks, I should say, into the end of April, start of May, whereas the excise cut, which I think is quite a blunt tool, it's probably fair to say, goes to the end of May. Where we're going to be in all of that, who knows? And I think the bigger question for the government is, one, at the end of May, do they have to extend any of these measures? And will the appetite be there? Because I am already getting the sense, and Micheál Martin would have alluded to this in the press conference the other day, that there may be something they need to do heading into another winter season. And that raises difficult questions for them.
That's fine. So the end of May is basically hope the weather is good and that we're going to the World Cup and people will...
We'll find out tonight.
Will be just happy enough to get on with things at that point. But is there not a risk they might have to go back at this again before the end of May? This is the worst case scenario, but we know there's kind of a pause in hostilities, but we don't know if there's negotiations. One side are saying one thing, Iran saying the other. And meanwhile, the oil is not really getting out. So if Iran does decide to keep the Strait of Hormuz hostage, then diesel could go back up again and these excise cuts get wiped out.
Could, but I think what you're seeing from Trump, despite all his bluster, is a little bit of a drawback, isn't it? I mean, it may not seem like it, and he's kind of already saying today the Iranians are scared to admit they're in negotiations. Iran have said your 15-point plan is ridiculous. I think they've said come back with 5 more reasonable asks. And I was only talking to someone in the newsroom there yesterday and was saying, where are we going to be on Saturday? Because we were looking to Sunday and we're kind of thinking, Christ, we're just going to have to rip everything up again?
Yeah, so doing some measures for 2 weeks probably wouldn't make sense. Actually doing it until the end of May, at least you go, well, there's some level of certainty that even if things go back down, there'll be a cushion.
The concern in government was that they'd look foolish, despite the repeated opposition pressure, most notably from Sinn Féin over the last few weeks, to do something. They did something too soon. They might have to then go further only 2 weeks later, or they may even have to row back on it, because something like an excise cut is costing the Exchequer around €190 million for diesel and for petrol. I think the question for Simon Harris in this is, there's only so much money to go around, and he's going to want to keep that for the crucial month of September and October.
Big budget.
Yeah, his first big budget. And I think what's interesting here is this was his first big test, I think, as finance minister. I think in the end, the government kind of put on the green jacket and kind of bandied together. There weren't those kind of huge bust-ups you necessarily would have expected there to be. He's kind of taken the Paschal Donoghue, mantra and sticking to it. But I know for a fact that they will want a tax package in October, and he already told us.
And if you're giving that away in emergency measures,
Yeah.
you can't do that. But does that put that tax package a little bit in question now? Because if you're giving away 250 million thereabouts right now, if you have to extend some of those measures, say, for example, right, you mightn't have to do fuel allowance into June and July, but you might still have to do the excise cuts into June and July if petrol and diesel prices are still very high. And you might still have to do things for hauliers into the summer as well. So that's going to chip away.
It'll chip away.
And by the time you come to October and the real budget, there may not be as much money there as Simon Harris was thinking when he was telling you and others at Christmas that he's going to look after us middle-class workers.
There may not be, but I think when Paschal Donohoe did this in 2022, it was for about 3 months. You remember in early June, there was big, conniptions that the price of the pumps are going to go up again. We're probably going to see that again at the end of May. I'm not nobody in government's going to say right now. They obviously keep the door open. They know they have to. But they're not saying now, we might have to extend this. Warmer weather. It's probably unlikely, I would say, the fuel allowance will be an issue because, as they said, warmer weather, people not accessing it, etc., etc. I think on the money front, we're projecting, or the government's projecting, a €5 billion surplus this year. That's
with loads of money.
Loads of money, but
even
in theory, but look at, even the home heating oil, the fuel allowance extension's costing about 72 million. Now that's out of a €1 billion contingency fund, most of which is actually earmarked for expenses around the EU presidency, which I'd say it's fair to predict are probably going to balloon anyway. And that takes place in July. So it's possible that Simon Harris could find himself in September going into those budget negotiations and talking to his advisors going, well, I want to roll out these personal tax package, and find himself limited because if the government are leaving a door open for a cost of living package, right? Because bear in mind, before the war broke out, they were getting hammered by Sinn Féin over the cost of living, and everyone's frustrated. The inflation, while it's come down, hasn't come down quite to where we'd always like it. Electricity prices.
Sorry, this drives me mad, but people talk about inflation coming down. Inflation doesn't come down, it just rises at a lower rate. So prices are still going up, they're just not going up by as much. But it is a cumulative effect of, if something's gone up €5 and now it's only going up another €3,
It's
well,
still
that's gone
going
up €8.
It's still going up. And it's the same with the electricity price argument, where the government will always point to, well, it's come down since the worst of the Ukrainian inflation crisis, but we're still the 7th highest in Europe. So I don't know. If the government's going to have to make a choice here, because cost of living packages, the 3 budgets after the Ukraine war were about 1.5, I think it was, each billion. Personal tax packages generally around 1, and they always find about €200 million down the back of the couch in the days running up to the budget. I don't think they're going to be able to do both here.
It's a tricky one. And look, Simon Harris has put himself in this position. He doesn't have to be finance minister, and there is probably a reason that party leaders tended not to be finance ministers, because you carry the full weight of the decision. So when it's Paschal Donohoe, you can concoct a row. Simon Harris and Paschal Donohoe had a row. Simon Harris said they wanted to do X. Paschal Donohoe said, oh, no, I'm going to be tight with the purse. And you can kind of have this kind of internal row, and one side wins out in that. But the party leader has some level of, well, I'll blame Paschal.
Yeah.
That's different now. He carries the can for all of this, doesn't he? And it's a huge risk for his party that he is, if it goes well, it goes well. But if it doesn't, it's a huge risk.
He's also got the ghost of the very controversial VAT cut for the restaurant sector hanging over him, and the controversial VAT cut for the apartment construction hanging over him. Neither of which we've really seen the fruits of. Fine Gael pointed, this supports jobs and all the rest of it, but that's going to be thrown at them this year regardless, whatever they do. What I think will be really interesting to see, the dynamic between the Minister for Finance and the Minister for Public Expenditure is a kind of a key axis, right, in government. It worked well when it was Paschal and Michael McGrath, the Chuckle brothers, and everything was kind of similar
characters, let's be honest.
Pardon me?
Similar characters,
yes, similar reserved characters. It's been pointed to, or be refuted by his side, that Simon Harris tends to be a bit more populist and tends to want to give something to everyone, right?
Reactionary, I think, would be a fair
Well, reactionary certainly, but in terms of a budget, you're going to get all of these competing demands. So too will Jack Chambers from the Department of Public Expenditure. Do you get a sense that one's going to blame the other this year? It's possible, given that there's going to be a tight enough pot again to fight over. I'm not really sure the public are going to buy the sort of Donoghue, McGrath axis of we're doing this to protect the economy, even though we're flahulock with money. Well, where's it going?
What about Simon Harris over the last few days then? Do you think he has done well? It probably has been a little less dramatic than some might have expected.
Yeah, and some may have hoped.
Political writers.
Yeah, I mean, it has actually. I mean, it's my understanding that this really only kind of came on the table once Micheál Martin had his Oval Office one-on-one and face-to-face, that Taoiseach and Taoiseach spoke and said, we're going to need to do something, we're going to need to put together a package. Simon Harris's options were all pretty limited here. There was excise duty and there was extending the fuel allowance, and then there was this hauliers rebate. There wasn't a huge amount he could do. What I thought was interesting throughout this process, though, was that nearly every time Sinn Féin hammered the government or put out a statement, Simon Harris would retort. That's unusual for a finance minister. A finance minister normally keeps their counsel. They work studiously in the background. They get the hit, they get everything thrown at them, and they take it. I'm not sure Simon Harris is willing to just take it. And
they have surrogates then who'll go on the TV shows and the radio shows and do the batting for them. Talk to me a little bit about that though, Cónal. Simon Harris won't sit and take it. That you could argue that, well, why should he if he thinks he's right? If he has a position to defend, is it maybe not better that he goes out and fight? Because Fine Gael, Sinn Féin are top of the polls. So if you're second or third and polls, maybe you should fight.
Absolutely, but we would have talked about this probably by around the time that he took the finance brief, that it wasn't such a power grab, but it was a move to prevent anyone else in Fine Gael gaining a position of influence that could topple him or call into question his leadership, right? And he's used the finance brief so far, based on what we've seen, as you say, to fight back and fight his party's position, because they've been, that kind of second stool in the coalition's a tough position to be in. Politicising the finance ministry is going to be an interesting one, though, because I wonder, Sinn Féin's financial credentials, I think, have been called into question repeatedly, so he may have an easy time of it there. But when you're making those tough budget decisions and you have to come out and defend them,
you can't keep everybody happy. You just can't.
You can't. I'm not sure he's going to be able to do it all, but I think you're going to continue to see this sort of fiery finance minister for the next while anyway. And look, I suppose he's still learning the role. He's still bedding into it. Fine Gael are probably struggling a little bit to have their voice heard in government in some regards. I think they've done quite well in others, particularly in the housing space, actually. I think they've done quite well. But I will just say, I mean, in terms of some of the reaction here, I don't think it helped the government, whatever about what the opposition said, when the ESRI effectively came out and basically...
Explain that.
Well, yeah, I mean, they had a good line of Professor Alan Barrett from the ESRI when they were commenting on the measures that are brought forward in the energy package. They said, and this is in relation to excise duty, if you start having policies that direct moves to higher income people, it reduces your capacity to insulate those at the bottom. And that was in relation to the excise cut, that this is only really going to benefit those at the higher end, those with SUVs, etc. Now, they did say the fuel allowance was a targeted measure, but it just shows that the choices the government have here are ultimately ones that they can't insulate people at the bottom. And you wonder, well, come winter, that's exactly what they're going to have to do.
Well, so it kind of sounds a little bit like, while maybe this week wasn't fireworks, with Simon Harris in finance, you won't be stuck for things to write about going into the autumn. That's where I think you're landing there.
And I think I was saying to our colleague Fionnán Sheehan recently, you know yourself that the budget really starts in August, so it's going to be an
the last few years it started in about June.
Exactly.
It's earlier and earlier.
The general election year in 2024, it started at the Fianna Fáil Ardèche in April, when Michael McGrath came out and said we're going to do this for this tax band. So yeah.
Well, look, there's a target for you. The first Sunday Independent front page based on budget speculation. Can you make it into April? I want to talk a little bit about someone else in Fine Gael, another Fine Gael grandee, and Simon Harris's one-time pick to be president, and what a different scenario it might all be had she not dropped out of that race, perhaps. Mairead McGuinness, this week we understand from our colleagues in Euractiv, that she is going to be the EU Special Envoy for Religious Freedom. Now, can you tell me the last 3 envoys
No.
for religious freedom in the EU, please.
I can't tell you the last one. It was a man named Franz van Dale, and that's who she is.
Because it's written on the page
It's
in
written
front
on
of
this.
you.
It's written on this nice piece of paper I stole from upstairs. Franz van Dale. The full title, actually, Kevin, is Special Envoy for the Promotion of Freedom of Religion or Belief Outside the European Union.
Can you tell me what the job spec is?
The job spec is to establish a dialogue with national authorities of countries where there is FORB, right, freedom of religion or belief, persecution occurs. Right?
Okay.
Support dialogue, support to prevent de-radicalisation and promote religious diversity outside the European Union. Now, do I know what any of that means? No.
Well, that was going to be my next question. I suppose it's a real role because this hasn't been created for Mairead McGuinness. I think that's important to say. We've seen things before with Catherine Zappone and special envoys, and people might cast their mind back to that and go, oh, this is something they've just made up. It's not that. It pre-exists. The role is vacant, and she has obviously applied for it, and it has to be approved, I gather, by the Commission at that level. So it's a real thing. But yeah, what is it?
It's a special envoy. No, and it's been in place since 2016, this role. So it's about 10 years old. Just looking at a bit of background on this. 2020, there was a bit of a row over this because there wasn't one in place for a year or two. And a number of MEPs wrote to Ursula von der Leyen at the time saying this is a really important role. 2025 then, last year, 18 MEPs were concerned over the transparency around the selection process. So Mairead McGuinness, who, as you said, was the Fine Gael presidential candidate for dropping out, was it last August due to health concerns, was kind of off the radar, and now she's kind of back in the fray. And it looks, based on this role, that she'll be travelling quite far and wide outside of the EU, as I say, supporting dialogue, supporting preventing de-radicalisation, working with national governments, working with NGOs around as what's known as FORB.
We haven't heard from her yet about how this came about or what's behind it.
But it's interesting that this is the second Fine Gael grandee in a couple of weeks now to kind of re-emerge onto the...
Phil Hogan being the other?
Yeah, Phil Hogan being to like a big role.
You know, they say all political careers end in failure, but a lot of people do manage to reinvent themselves. I don't think it's true that they all do. Some people manage to reinvent themselves and find there's a lot of plum jobs out there, Cónal, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I really don't want to be cynical about this one because according at least to what I'm reading and what I've read from European sources, it's seen in some quarters the Commission as being an important role.
Oh, I don't want to diminish the role at all. Or the one Phil Hogan is going for is really important.
Oh, absolutely.
Role as well.
Phil Hogan.
But there's big jobs out there, is my point.
And it seems that there's these endless amount of big jobs that just need to be filled. So I can't wait to see whoever gets next. I mean, although Pascal Donoghue's done really well for himself. Now, that's not a made-up job. That's not a special envoy. I'm not saying the special envoy's made up. It does sound a little bit wishy-washy, though.
Yeah, well, I'm sure at some stage she will sit down and tell us all what exactly the role entails. But it's good to see her back out there. In fairness, she's a long-time public servant, so it's good that she's back on her feet and working again. Talk to me about the by-elections, Cónal. It's kind of gone a little bit quiet in that area, but I know all the parties in the background, and there's several independents now entering the field as well, are kind of tipping away at it. But I think in the next few weeks we can expect that to ramp up.
We're probably about 8-9 weeks out from the by-election now, and while there would have been a good bit of momentum and I think excitement amongst different parties and independent candidates a month or so ago, let's face it, by and large, because of Jerry Hutch coming back, etc. That had kind of died off in the last few weeks. It still doesn't really feel like we're it's not that long, 8-9 weeks, and yet the rubber has not hit the road yet. But this week we would have seen the Lord Mayor of Dublin, Ray McAdam, be selected for Fine Gael.
Pascal's protégé.
Unfortunately, he won't have Pascal with him because Pascal's not allowed to knock on doors Fine Gael under the rules of his new job. I wouldn't entirely write Ray McAdam off. At least people are saying that numerous across.
It's a tough sell.
Very tough.
To be a government, but also in that constituency for Fine Gael to take a seat in a by-election would be. I mean, if they achieved that, it would be bigger than Ireland getting to the World Cup in Fine Gael terms.
But if they don't and Fianna Fáil don't, it'll be the first time in the history of the constituency there's neither Fianna Fáil Fine Gael candidate there. That would be pretty remarkable in terms of shift.
Of course, for context, Bertie Ahern's old stomping ground, Fianna Fáil haven't been able to get back in there since Bertie Ahern's days. So they're a long time without Fianna Fáiler at this stage. But yeah, it would be a remarkable outcome, and it would leave us with who then, Cónal? Because Sinn Féin, I would have thought, were home and hosed in this. People asked me when this by-election who's going to win. I would have said Sinn Féin, but the internal wrangling there has definitely put a question mark in my mind over that.
We all kind of expected Gillian Sherritt, who is a party member, to get the nod. She would have tacitly been endorsed by the party leader Mairead McGuinness, and it wasn't to be. And it was actually the day of the vote. What was this about now? 3-4 weeks ago? Someone in Sinn Féin said to me, never trust Dublin Sinn Féin. They can predict a lot in Sinn Féin, but never trust Dublin Sinn Féin. So anyway, the party members went for Janice Boylan, who, if I'm honest, tanked in the general election as Mary Lou's running mate. And she'll be running again. Where this leaves Sinn Féin in Dublin Central is entirely unclear. I still think Janice Boylan could get a decent showing in the way...
She could still win it.
She could still win it. Yes, she could still win
Mary
it.
Lou gets behind her. There is massive Mary Lou vote there.
But we're not seeing Mary Lou get behind her, really. I mean, there would have been a video...
But I think when it boils down to it, it's 8 weeks out. Mary Lou will want... There's two scenarios there. Is one...
you abandon it and that's it.
One, you have a running mate, even someone that wasn't your first choice, and you decide, well, it's better to have them in and have another Sinn Féin seat, or you abandon it and then people are saying, oh, Mary Lou messed that one up.
They might already say that she did, but just looking at both Galway West and Dublin Central, it's also interesting looking at Fianna Fáil in these, because as far as I can see, every other party and independent has shown their hand. And Fianna Fáil, this weekend we'll have 3 councillors, Alan Cheevers, Marcin Lee and Cillian Keane, going for the nomination. And that will be this weekend, as I say. And then on Monday evening next, Fianna Fáil will hold their Dublin Central selection convention. And it's going to be John Stevens, who's the Deputy Lord Mayor, and who is a Bertie kind of acolyte, really. He's backed by Bertie.
You're probably more likely to see a lot of Bertie on that campaign trail.
Which could help him.
Than Micheál.
Absolutely, and the sense I'm getting from nearly every quarter of Fianna Fáil is they want nothing to do with these by-elections, really. They're not interested in them. They've pushed it out. They pushed it out far enough. Their candidates aren't that well known either.
Let's stay in Dublin for a second, right?
Sure.
Let's dismiss Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, right? And you're going to play that clip back to me at some stage, I imagine, in a couple of months' time, perhaps. But I'm going to dismiss them.
Okay,
for the
put them
moment,
aside.
Dublin Central, at least. Sinn Féin, we have a big question mark over. That kind of brings us to the Soc Dems and Labour. And traditionally, this was a big Labour stronghold with Joe Costello. Obviously, Labour just pipped the Monk last time out with Marie Sherlock. And then there is Social Democrats who have built up a constituency here, largely around Gary Gannon. So are they the ones we should be talking about, their candidates?
Yeah, I think...
and remind us who they are.
The Social Democrats, Daniel Ennis, definitely. He's kind of been early one of the favourites, and I think, given how things went with Sinn Féin, people after that just said, oh, it's Daniel's to lose. It's Daniel's to lose. Ruth O'Dea is Marie Sherlock's parliamentary assistant. She'll be running for Labour. She's not that well known in the constituency. I don't think Labour have quite the same resources as the Social Democrats at the moment, or Sinn Féin. As you say, there is definitely a vote there in those leafier parts. I mean, bear in mind, areas like Glasnevin and Drumcondra, parts of Cabra, where I live, are kind of traditional Labour strongholds. That's kind of weaned. And then you've Jerry Hutch. And he's been quiet enough now the last week or two. He's just congratulated the boys in green on their upcoming victory against Chechnya. But I think...
Ever the optimist, the Hutch, perhaps we shall say.
And of course, you've got the Green Party, Janet Horner, as well. Look, the Green Party are having a little bit of a parliamentary resurgence anyway. They've got a bit more of a well-oiled team behind them. They've kind of figured...
I think it's too soon, though.
Oh, it's too soon, definitely. They've kind of figured out where they want to go. They're getting their policy house back in order in Dáil Éireann, etc. And
they're probably very encouraged by the rise of Greens in the UK and across many countries in Europe, which is a different phenomenon in some ways. It's a reaction to kind of more right-wing politics and stuff, but probably buoyed by that.
And I think actually the recent energy debate has kind of brought back... I mean, we've seen Eamon Ryan quite a lot lately, haven't we? Suddenly... He's kind of everywhere.
What was it Leo Varadkar used to say about politicians who retired and took columns in the Irish Times? Maybe we won't go there. Let's move to Galway.
Let's move to Galway.
This is the by-election, of course, prompted by Catherine Connolly's election to the Oris. Yes. What is happening there?
It's a bit more of an open field, definitely. As I say, Labour running Helen Ogbu. Sinn Féin are running Mark Lohan, who's a former trade union official and former city councillor down there. He'd be quite well known, and bear in mind, Mairead Farrell topped the poll by quite a significant margin in 2024 in the general election. Fine Gael, obviously, have Senator Sean Kine, who's well known in the area. He's well known there.
You should do okay again.
Again, I think the only party in both constituencies that you can't entirely write off, funnily enough, is Fine Gael. Now, let's play the clip back in a few months' time when we're talking about this. And then, of course, you have Meads and Fionlock for the Social Democrats. Their chances down there, I don't think, are as good. They don't have the quite strong same base, the same. Like Daniel Ennis, city councillor, he's been pounding the pavements for a couple of years now. He's also very well associated with Gary Gannon. And then you Sheila Garrity as well, who's kind of the Connolly candidate, close associate of Catherine Connolly. She's probably in with the shout. A couple of people down there were saying recently that it's a really open field.
I think there's a few other independents.
You've Noel Thomas
down there as well. Yeah,
you've Noel Thomas.
Ireland.
Yeah, Independent Ireland, and he would have been fifth. I wouldn't say narrowly lost out, but he wasn't far off taking the seat last time, and I certainly think he fancies himself being in with a chance. And then you've Thomas Welby, who's another independent. He'd be a close associate of Noel Grealish. The sense in there is that he probably won't really feature, but it's a much more open field. As I say, Fianna Fáil have their selection convention this weekend. I hate saying it for whoever's going to get it, but I don't think they stand much of a chance. But what they're not doing is they're not doing another Gráinne Seoig or parachuting someone in either constituency.
Right, I'm not going to do the thing of asking you to call them because, in fairness, I think it is too early in the game. But we might revisit that in a couple of weeks' time when the full slate of candidates is known. And that's where we're going to leave it for this week. Thank you to Cónal Thomas for joining me, and thanks to you for watching and listening. As always, you can find our latest episodes on the Irish Independence YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you soon.